Hello again. Thank you for joining me for Module 2 of the Research Methods class for Florida Atlantic University. This chapter, Chapter 2 from the Adams and Lawrence textbook, is entitled Build a Solid Foundation, Finding, Reading, and Evaluating Past Research. And at the end of this video, you will also find the instructions for completing assignment number 2. This chapter starts by talking about primary sources and secondary sources in research. It's also similar to that, but not the same, is the term primary research and secondary research. Primary research is when you're out there actually doing the research yourself. Secondary research is when you are looking at the primary research of other people or the primary sources of other people. So you can go to a primary source when you are doing your research. And that is the source, the research that has been written up by the person who did the primary research. Secondary sources are people who have compiled in other ways, and so we'll get through that. Secondary research is the authors review research but do not report results of an original study. So one thing that's very important that you distinguish in your own research projects, and in my past teaching this class, what I have found is that students really get caught up in popular works. So it's really important that you understand the difference between a scholarly work and a popular work. Scholarly work can be primary or secondary sources, but it must meet all of these following criteria. The goal of the work has to be to advance knowledge and scientific study. The author must have expertise in the field. The work is written for an audience with knowledge in the field as opposed to the general public, and the work builds upon other scholarly sources that are clearly cited. And that's what if it doesn't have all four of those things, it's not scholarly work. It's probably a popular work. But the popular work is really easy to find on the internet, which is a problem because students typically want to go with the easiest path. And so I need to caution you against that. Specifically watch for Wikipedia, Psychology Today, Scientific American. Those are popular works. They're written for an audience that does not have expertise in the field. Advertorials are the worst, especially when you are doing research as a university student, as an undergraduate, because the best place to find potential students, if you are a university or if you are especially a private university, is to look for, and if you're looking for potential students as a private university, you are going to look for people like most of yourselves. And so the goal is to hook you in with an internet search that will pull you in, and then they put ads down the sides that tell you all about private universities and just buying books and buying stuff that students buy. And so those are advertorials. They're meant to percolate to the top in the search engines on typical search parameters that you're going to use as you write your research project. So what I find is that people think, oh wow, look at this. This is a story about the developing brain on marijuana. I've got to tell you, every semester I have one, probably two every semester, who do the report on, the research report on legalizing marijuana. I'm fine with that because I am a huge advocate for legalizing marijuana. I've never smoked it a day in my life, but I have a problem with the fact that we have legalized alcohol and tobacco, which causes far more deaths, and so the hypocrisy of making marijuana illegal just because it puts a certain population into prison is beyond idiotic. So anyways, big huge fan. You can go ahead and do your project on legalizing marijuana or medicinal marijuana if you want. It's very easy to search on, but it's also very easy to get caught into the advertorials. So if you're going to do work on stuff like that, make sure you find scholarly works, not popular works. Articles in academic journals are always scholarly. That's why I want you to look there first. Primary sources in academic journals and secondary sources are both there, so we've already covered that off. A literature review will be required in your research project. You will not be getting into a meta-analysis, and you will not be doing commentaries. But we will primarily be doing looking for and sourcing your research projects out of secondary sources in academic journals. And you will have to have 2 of these cited in your research project, so that will comprise your literature review. So you will be doing a literature review this semester with 2 academic sources. This is where, this is the path. This here outlined in blue is the trap where you can And I understand now where my students get caught in this trap of going to popular works, popular sources, is that I start you off on assignment number 1 looking at popular sources, because what I want assignment number 1 to be is I want it to be easy. I want it to be a mechanism where you find this fire in your belly, that passion that you have for a particular topic. That passion will be explored through popular sources. So I want you to actually, for assignment number 1, come through and look for these popular sources. They're going to be used infrequently in your research project, but I want you to use them to obtain ideas for your research project, and I want you to build a case for the importance of your research project through these popular sources. So I do want to see 2, 3, 4, 5 citations in your research project that tell me a little bit about how you discovered your passion and how you discovered the importance for the topic that you're going to write. But then I need to have 2 scholarly sources in there that are from academic journals. So I need these plus 2 scholarly sources. So that's the importance of what we're going to be doing this semester here. So all of the rest of this chart here, go through it, make sure you understand it. I don't need to go through it here in the video. It's on page 38. Conference papers and unpublished manuscripts and scholarly books and theses and dissertations and undergraduate research and abstracts. These are other scholarly sources. You have to do your own abstract for your research project, so make sure you read this carefully in the chapter so that you understand what a good abstract is. And an abstract also becomes a scholarly source because it'll tell you who, if it comes out of certain academic journals or other scholarly sources that meet all of those 4 criteria we talked about, then an abstract can be cited because it's going to have some very important stuff. I have a lot of work in my dissertation that comes from abstracts, because when you're in a conference paper and when you go to conferences as often as I do, that's typically all you see is the abstract. And so you can say, so-and-so is doing research in this area because this is the conference paper that he presented, and in his abstract he said, she said this. How you find good research is the important part that you need to take away from this semester as well. Library database searches are going to be your primary source. That's my preference for your primary source. Now you can find if you can find other scholarly work through keyword searches, and even when you do the keyword searches at the sources which I'm going to tell you, which is the FAU Library Searchwise function, start broad in order to identify your keywords. And then narrow your search down, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Heads up, this is going to be a part of assignment number 1. I need you to cite and find a source for what you're going to do for assignment number 1. Very, very quick, simple, 1-point thing on assignment number 1 out of the 20 points, but I need you to do it in order for me to understand that you know how to find stuff on FAU's Searchwise function. So the Searchwise function is accessed at fau.edu/library. If you have never used the Searchwise function from your home computer, it will ask you for your OWL card number and an ID, so make sure that you do that at least the first time, and then you'll never have to do it again from your home computer. But I want you to key in something here for Searchwise and find me a academic source for what you're going to do assignment number 1 on. I put in the search parameters, and you'll understand when you watch the videos. This is very critical for the when you look at the assignment number 1 videos. There's 2 videos. And I talk about the Barna Group. Barna Group is a particularly fascinating research think tank for Christian churches that is trying to continue to make Christian churches relevant in a modern society. And you'll understand when you watch video 1 and video 2 for the assignment number 1 why Barna Group is so important to me. And so I put Barna Group and Christian. And is a search parameter. So I want to find something that said Barna Group, in quotes, and something about Christian church relevance. So this is the first hit. Got lots of material here, several pages. 3 things that I want you to be very aware of is here I want you to click on, when you put your search parameters into Searchwise, I want you to click on here where it says limit it to sources from peer-reviewed journals. And I also want you to click here where it says that you want journal articles. So you will get journal articles, or you will get peer-reviewed journal articles. And also you can limit it by the date. It talks in the textbook about limiting your search to the last 10 years. There are times when you want something that's 30, 40, 50 years old. My dissertation is about research that was done in the 1960s and what people wrote in the 1960s and 1970s. So this is the mechanism where you get to limit your search parameters by dates and learn how to use that function. So anyways, when I did that, I limited, I found this article here on, you can see there were several pages worth of material here. On page number 1, right at the bottom, I found an article from a peer-reviewed journal, and I hovered over it, and I got this window here when I hovered over it. So I know that this source came from the Journal of Psychology and Christianity. I've got the publisher, I've got the date, it's 2012, it's new, it's a book review, but it was written as a journal article. And so the article title caught my attention, Unchristian, What a New Generation Really Thinks About Christianity and Why It Matters. So this got me the article that I was looking for, and when you watch the videos for assignment number 1, you'll understand how this would have met the requirement for that extra point by citing something relevant to what I was doing my assignment number 1 on. Identify and find sources. There's other search strategies in there. Make sure you read them carefully in the textbook. And other internet searches, as I've mentioned, the advertorials are traps. So use them judiciously. Be aware that you will find advertorials right at the top of your search results. You may have to drill down a little better. I would just prefer that you do all of your searches out of fau.edu/library and use the searchwise function and then limit it to peer-reviewed journal articles. That's the easiest way to do it, and you have access to literally thousands of journals. And you don't have to worry then about whether it's going to be a peer-reviewed source. How to find the full text of an article. If you go through the FAU library, you will always have the full text of the article. If you want to search something else out, where you found a study by somebody that was cited in your favorite news source, CNN.com, Huffington Post, so on, Fox News. If you find an author, you can do a Google search by that author, search in your local library. If you can't find it at the FAU library, go to Google Scholar and see if you can find it there. And organization of a primary research article. Okay, so now we're done with the idea of the peer-reviewed sources and the scholarly works. Now we're actually going to talk about the structure of your research project yourself. You're going to have, these are important, vital, critical, essential sections in your research project. Your research project that you write by the end of this semester needs to be 8 to 10 pages long, and it has to have certain elements to it. It has to have the title, and it has to have the author. It has to be a good title. I grade you and I give you points based on a good title. A good title has a hook in it. I mean, when you look at the search parameters, which I got on my SearchWise hit, the title pulled me in. All I have here on this page is the title. So that's why it's so important that you have a good title, because on the search results, people are only going to see your title. And then you can pull them into your abstract, and then you can pull them into your article. So the order of importance is fabulous, amazing title, a really gripping abstract, very short, 350 words, and then once you get them started reading your article, you have to have a really good introduction. So this title here, Unchristian, What a New Generation Really Thinks About Christianity and Why It Matters. I prefer titles that have a colon in them. The colon tells the reader that you've got a good title, and then it has the hook behind the good title. So the title gives it the meat. There's whatever that is before the colon, that's the meat of your research. And then the hook is after the colon. Never try and avoid a question in the title. Titles with questions just don't work. Don't even put the question in the abstract. Tell the reader what you're going to tell them. Make your claim. Don't have the reader ask a question. Tell them what the answer is to their question. That's how you get them in. You're the author of your research project, and you're writing it as a student at Florida Atlantic University, as a student in the research methods class. So that can all go into this author section here. And then the abstract, that is a brief review of the entire study, and then a good introduction. Once you've got them in with the title and the abstract, then they're going to read 3 or 4 paragraphs before you lose them. And chances are they may only ever read your introduction. And so if you've got to make your claim, and that claim has to be something that the reader is interested in. So make a good strong claim in your introduction. That's typically the opening paragraph ends with a thesis sentence. The thesis sentence, if you read the thesis sentence and skipped to the conclusion, the thesis sentence makes a claim, and then you skip to the conclusion, and your conclusion says, this is how I supported the claim that I made in my thesis sentence. So the opening paragraph tells them about what you're going to do, very similar to the abstract, but a little more specific. But that opening paragraph has to end with a thesis sentence that says, here's my claim, it's a bold claim, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to support it. And then you can, I never write my introduction paragraph and my thesis sentence until I've written my conclusion, because by the time I've articulated my conclusion, or when you're starting your research project, what you hope is your conclusion, because you have a hypothesis in mind, you have an idea that your research, what your research should support and what you want to support with this research and why your research is important. And that all goes into your conclusion when you say it was important and this is how it supported it, or it didn't support it and I'm going to have to start again. That's a valid conclusion. But that claim that you make in the last sentence of your opening paragraph is answered in the concluding section of your paper. So that's the importance of this introduction. It gives a really basic overview of what other past research has said. It gives a rationale for the current study, what you think is missing, or what you think you can add to it. And it kind of leads in, but it doesn't necessarily state your hypothesis or research questions. Those are going to be in the section after the introduction. But the hypothesis is implied, and your research question is implied in your introduction. So, typical organization of an introduction is it begins by introducing the topic and its importance. The review of past research makes up the majority of the introduction. Not a thorough literature review, but what other people have claimed and supported. Really quickly, a paragraph on each of your literature review pieces. And then end with the focus of the study of the authors conducted, and then you go into your method. And so, your participants or subjects and the measures and materials, the procedures and designs, and what they missed here in this in the textbook here is the literature review gets its own section. The literature review is not part of the introduction. So what they have here, this typical organization, the review of past literature is very briefly introduced, and then you have a literature review section by itself. And then you segue from your introduction into that literature review section, into your hypothesis section, and your research questions subsection. I'll give you a template for your actual research project, but these are the main sections. So your results, because we're not doing primary research, we don't have a results section in ours. What we do is we have a little subsection of what the other people's results were, or what your theory, how your theory is supported by this method that you described for looking at other people's work. And so that is, the results are a subsection of the method section, the way we do it. And the discussion is what we call a conclusion. So this is a psychology paper. We're doing a public administration paper. So ours ends with a conclusion, not a discussion. And then you end with your references. This is the shape of a primary research article. When somebody does primary research, they try and start broad, they get very specific in the middle, and then they end broad. And so what you will do on your paper is you will start broad, you will say, okay, this is what other people have done. These are my ideas for actually improving on what other people did. And then you end broad by saying, you know what, this is generalizable to this degree. I want to look at this specific school because if what I think works for this very specific school, it's generalizable. So that's how you broaden it again when you end your research, by saying, you know what, this is generalizable, and that's why I think it's very important. How to build on past research: you replicate the study, so you do what other people have done in other areas. If I saw what somebody did in Chicago and I want to do it in Miami, that's a good reason to do the research. Will I get the same results in Miami that they got in Chicago? Excellent reason. Conduct an experiment based on a quasi or non-experimental study. Other people may have done some primary research, and so their research may have been very experimental, but you think, you know what, if I tweaked this, and if I focused this on a very narrow population, or if I did a case study on this, that's quasi or non-experimental study, because you are being you're taking a very broad study and you're saying, I'm just going to apply it to a very specific population. You can conduct a similar study with a different outcome or a dependent variable. So you know what, oh, okay, if they tried this in Chicago with school teachers doing this, why don't we try this in Miami with the school teachers doing something else? Or if they looked at math students in Chicago, I want to look at science students in Miami. Examine how another variable might impact results, same thing. The citations are the most important thing, which are the most difficult thing. I won't say they're the most important thing. The most important thing is how well you write. But critically important is how well you cite your sources, and number one, when you do these citations, to recognize that they are from scholarly works, that they are peer-reviewed. And so this is, when you give me a proper citation, I can say, yes, nice job, very good journal, very well supported claims, and that's why the citations are so important. Learn how to do this, but I also have found that what they have in the textbook is very limited, because what we find these days as students, particularly in this course where we have to move fairly fast, and you don't have all the time in the world because it's a very short course and I compress a lot of material in, I want you to be able to do these citations quickly. So I use a very, very good source that I found is libguides.radford.edu. This is from Radford University. And you look at the tabs on here, when you get into this isn't the home page that you land on when you type libguides.radford.edu. Over on the left-hand side, they have APA style for undergraduates, and then they have APA style for graduate students. You can work with the APA style for undergraduates, but if you're comfortable, and I think you are, most people should be comfortable enough for the standards for graduate students, these are the standards for graduate students. It tells you how to, this particular tab that's open here that you see on this screen is about rules for about how to cite a journal article with a DOI. So this is the type of citation that is exactly like the one you see in the textbook on this previous slide that I showed. This is how Radford University tells you to cite that same thing, and it has a DOI. If you do not have a DOI on your citation, then this is the format you follow here. It has the rules outlined for you, and it gives you an example. It gives you notes, and it tells you how to do an in-text citation. So very, very important that you also do the in-text citations properly, because that's what sends me back to the references section at the back of the page. Websites. You will find websites, especially if you are looking at non-scholarly work. If it's non-scholarly work, if it's popular work, popular research, then you still have to cite them. And so this is how you will find most of your popular work is from a website. So this is how you cite a web page, and it has to have everything here. Otherwise, I can't find it. If you are going to cite an online article with a full URL, if you have the URL, this is how you will cite a full online article. If it was only online, if it ever appeared in print, I want to see it in the other format. But if you cannot find out whether it ever appeared in print, this is the format that you will use. Government agency issuing the report. Lots and lots of students find really good material, especially because I require infographics, a chart, a table, and most of the charts and tables come from government agencies. So this is how you cite a government agency. Very, very important, very difficult citation to do without some kind of help. So come here and follow this example for citing a government agency, because some of the best infographics you will find will come from government agencies. And so this is an important page for you to come to. The print book format, if you have something from a print book, I'm really impressed with things that come out in books. Most of the undergraduate students don't read entire books, they read and compress and study scholarly articles. But if you find something in a book, this is how you cite a print book. This is how you cite a Kindle book. So if the book that you read is on Kindle, or if it's on the Apple iPad, you will just be able to tell me something else about the online book. So it helps you in citing electronic books. No personal author, but an organization published the page. Something from the Sierra Club, for example, here. So if it's something that came from Planned Parenthood, then this is how you would cite something that came from the Planned Parenthood page. No author was listed. Advertorials, there may be some really decent stuff out there from an advertorial that tells me the compelling importance of the topic that you chose. If it's from a advocacy organization for preventing teen suicide. It may be an advertorial because organizations that want to prevent teen suicide want to attract teenagers. So it's a very noble cause to try and attract teenagers to their site, and it qualifies as an advertorial because it's meant to be a hook that will bring you to their site. So you may have a very compelling story that comes from these type of advertorials, and so you'll be able to cite them because I want to hear how compelling that narrative is too. So that's how, if you don't have an author, it may be an advertorial, but this is how you cite it so that you can cite it properly. Okay, we're coming up to the end of the chapter. The Adams and Lawrence textbook has some really useful self-tests which you can do. Here is a self-test on page 65. The answer to this is on page 506. And so I want you to practice writing a reference using APA format. They've given you the information here. And just write this out and check your work to see if you've actually done it properly. Heads up on practice 2.4. This is going to be part of assignment number 2, so pay particular attention to this. You don't need to actually study it yet, but be aware we're going to be coming back to this for assignment number 2. This says it's a practice 2.4, but there's nothing at the back of the text on this because, as it says here, answers will vary based on your topic. But this is kind of what we're going to be doing for assignment number 2. We're going to base it on this. So heads up, this is what you should be paying attention to here in chapter 2 for assignment number 2. But right now we're going to get into assignment number 1. If you're on Blackboard and you see content assignments, so this is where you get into all of your study modules. Right below that is the content that is based for your assignments. Below that is the content that you will need for your research project. We'll be getting into that once we're done the 5 assignments. Submit all work here is where you click to send me everything that you do. And exams and quizzes. There's going to be a lot of participation points in the exams and quizzes section here. But for right now, click on contents assignments. You can always tell where you're at in the Blackboard by looking at this little bar across here. It'll tell you how far down you are in each one of these subsections. So if we go into here and now click on assignment number 1, and it will actually show you that you're in assignment number 1, worth 20 points. So all of the content in assignment number 1 starts with the instructions, and then it gives you 10 pages, the first 10 pages of chapter 10 of the Remler and Van Ryzen textbook, which is a textbook that I've taught out of in the past. And I really like this section, these first 10 pages, because it gives a lot of graphics. And I am a very visually oriented person, and I want you to be able to do a diagrammatic model of your research. I want you to be able to tell me a diagram of causation or correlation. So that's what assignment number 1 is about. Assignment number 1 has an example video part 1 of 2 and example video part 2 of 2. And as well, after you have read the assignment, after you've read the 10 pages from the Remler and Van Ryzen textbook, it's a PDF file, and after you have watched both of the videos, you will have formulated a few things in your head that I have found that as students start working on this, they need some hints. So after you've done that, and don't even bother getting this hints, assignment number 1 helpful hints, until you've done all of that. It's going to be counterproductive for you to read that before you've done all of the other 4 points. So once you've done all of these 4 things and you've read all of them and watched the videos, get out this number hints thing and find out the common mistakes that other students have made. And also, here's that same thing again on citing your source. I put that here, but once again, you're going to get into some stuff that's really far more complicated than this. So use the Radford University site that I gave you a little bit earlier, libguides.radford.edu, and learn how to do the other citations that are going to be more reflective of what you actually find here. So the PDF file from the Remler and Van Ryzen textbook, chapter 10, talking about causation. It talks about how family dinners are correlated to kids people who have families who share a family dinner together typically have children who are less likely to experiment with drugs and alcohol. So the figure 10.1 talks about, oh, okay, is it family dinners that is correlated with a negative correlation, and the sign is important. There's a negative correlation. So if you increase the number of family dinners that you have, or if a family has lots of family dinners together and their children, typically their teenagers, show a low propensity to experiment with drugs. So family dinners go up, experimentation with drugs goes down. That's a negative correlation. I want a negative or a positive sign on your models when you diagram them. But we could also argue that, oh, okay, if kids start using drugs, then they're not going to be coming home for dinner as much. So which caused which? Did we start with the increasing family dinners, or did we start with the drug use? So figure 10.2 talks about a common cause. Is it because as teenagers grow up and get a little older and they're in their teens, they sometimes get part-time jobs, so they're not home for dinner, and they also choose their own friends and they're feeling a little more independent from their parents. So it's just this fact that these kids are growing up, and so this is a common cause that what we looked at was we looked at family dinners. We looked at family dinners and we looked at an increase in family dinners or a decrease in family dinners and a negative correlation with drug use. But we failed to identify maturity as the cause. So what we saw was a correlation without a cause. It was maturity that was the cause. So identifying a correlation isn't the same thing as identifying a cause. But if it's biased from a common cause, then all three have an interplay with each other, and so they are all dependent on each other, the maturity and the family dinners and the drug use. Okay? Figure 10.4 is biased from an unknown common cause. In this case, maybe it's the urban environment. So what we're looking at in our research is the family dinner and its correlation with an increased a decrease in family dinner correlated with an increased propensity to experiment with drugs. But we didn't identify that it's the urban environment, because we did our study in an urban environment. We didn't even think about the urban environment. So maybe it's the urban environment which makes it more likely that as kids get older, they're not home as often for dinner. And they also, in an urban environment, have easier access to drugs. So this is failing to identify an unknown cause, and the unknown common cause is also a problem. Simultaneity bias is what we originally looked at in figure 10.1, but we fail to identify that both are happening at once. In figure 10.1, it's either this one or this one. It's either family dinners was the primary event in a temporal sense, it happened first, or the drug use was the primary event, it happened first. But maybe they happen both at the same time, and so that's the simultaneity bias. 10.6 talks about a causal mechanism as an intervening variable, and this is what it is in most cases. And so I focus primarily on intervening variables in my dissertation, and I think that is probably the case with most of the research that you're going to be doing as well, is that there's intervening variables. Family dinners improve communication between parents and children, and improved communication between parents and children decreases the likelihood to experiment with drugs. Okay? So that's the important thing to understand as well, is that there is a intervening variable in this case. So there may be this. So these are the 6 diagrams which I suggest that you get started with as you start assignment number 1. You can probably find one of those 6 diagrams that will describe your favorite story. So I want you to find a story that's passionate, that ignites the fire in your belly, something that you're passionate about. It's a news story. Go to your primary news source, as I show on the video, and start there, just as I did on the video, and I look forward to seeing some of your ideas. Do not spend more than an hour on this, unless it's something that you're going to be pursuing for your research project. If you find the topic now that you want to pursue for your research project for this semester, you can put all the time into it you want, because it will be something that you gain. But if you just want to get this assignment over with, just find a story, something that's really interesting, try and find and identify correlation or causation, and put together some bubbles. Have a friend hold your iPhone while you write on a piece of paper and draw your diagram like I did in the videos. And that's all I need, is just a short little video and a 3/4 page write-up with a citation. If you use a popular source, cite the popular source. If you can find me a peer-reviewed journal article, that's a bonus. I'll be impressed. And you can use SearchWise for all of those. SearchWise will also give you the fau.edu/library site. Will give you newspaper stories and other blogs and mainstream media articles and outlets. So SearchWise may be good for that as well, if you don't have a favorite news source like Huffington Post like I do. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing your assignments.